Good afternoon. My name is Carol Anderson, or you might know me as Miss Lowry, the school marm at the Territorial Schoolhouse here in Edmond. I wanted to take a few minutes this afternoon and talk to you a little bit about an important historic event that we will be remembering this next week on April 22nd, as a matter of fact. Did you know that nearly 131 years ago, we had something called a land run here? And in fact, it was the day in 1889, April 22nd, that our town of Edmond was settled. Yeah, and there were about 200 people that settled in our little town that very first day. But let me tell you a little bit more about the whole big event. There were people that came from all over our country, and they lined up on the boundary lines, and when it was 12 noon, a gunshot went off, and between 50 and 60,000 people scurried off on horses and in wagons, and some of them running, and some of them on, well, donkeys, even a bicycle, to claim their land. By the end of the day, there were a lot of happy people, but also not everybody got exactly what they wanted. Needless to say, though, our president, Benjamin Harrison, was a very generous man to allow all that land to be divided up. And all we had to pay for it was a mere, well, less than $20 for 160 acres. I thought it would be kind of fun today to read to you a story. And this story is about one little boy and his dad and the experience that they had on their land run that they did in 1889. And it's called the Oklahoma Land Run by Una Bell Townsend, right? And so let's begin. I love wagons, don't you? I can do it, Pa. I know I can, said Jesse as he fed the horses, Ben and Bo, in the shed. Son, you are just too young. And it's dangerous, said his pa. Hundreds of people will be there, maybe even thousands. Our horses are strong, but if they get too excited, they're going to be really hard to handle. Paul tried to get his shoulder and arm in a better position in his sling. He had fallen last week, and it had been a really good fall. Tomorrow was going to be April 22nd, 1889, at noon, on 2 million acres called the unassigned lands. There would be given an opportunity for settlers to go to a land run. Now, this stream of pounding a stake in the ground to claim 160 acres of free land in the Oklahoma Territory would not come true. Tugging at his sling again, he knew he couldn't even drive the wagon, much less get off and hammer a stake. Pa, Jesse pleaded, it's our only chance. You've got to let me drive. I can do it, Pa. You're right, Jesse. I guess you'll have to drive the team tomorrow, Pa said, picking up a wooden stake with his good hand. I'll be there beside you, Jesse, but I just don't like the idea of my 9-year-old son racing against grown men. He threw the stake to the ground. That evening, Jesse helped his pa lie down. He pulled a quilt over him and said, Pa, I know I can do this. I will get us some really good land. Well, When it was time to go to the starting line the very next morning, Ma gave them a dinner bucket. There were beans in it and biscuits and jerky. Jessie helped Pa climb into the wagon. "Get close to the front," said Pa. "We'll have to look out for some Sooners. They'll have their own claim registered before most of us can even get our stake into the ground." At the starting line, they waited for the signal to begin. Men pushed past them on their horseback. Others were in wagons and on one-horse buggies, wiggling their way toward the starting line. A few of them were on bicycles and on foot, trying to sneak ahead of all the other ones. "Whoa! Now you get on out and back behind that line," shouted a tall soldier on horseback as he patrolled the starting area. The men turned around and joined the others. One family tried to hide in a clump of bushes. "Move back!" yelled the tall Fort Reno cavalryman. "Pa, a captain over there says the trains are full of people and they're ready to jump off for some of the land," said Jessie. "Do you reckon that's true?" "Don't know," said Pa. "There must be 100 wagons around here. I'm sure there's plenty of people on trains, too." The impatient crowd continued to push toward the starting line. As it neared noon, the settlers became very quiet. At 12 o'clock, there was a cannon blast that shattered the silence. Riders on horses darted out all the way to the front. "Yee-haw!" said Jessie, slapping the reins to his horses. Ben and Bob sprang forward. The rumblings of the horses' hooves and the wagon wheels filled the air. Dust was flying everywhere, and Jessie's eyes were stinging. He and his pa were gasping for air. Jessie's heart was pounding wildly. He had a tight grasp on the reins. Within a few minutes, his hands throbbed, and he relaxed his grip a little. It would be a really long race. A rough-looking man in a nearby wagon yelled, "Hey, you! Get out of my way, boy! Young'uns your age, you shouldn't be a-driving." He grabbed his whip and boomed at his horses. "Faster," I said. "Faster!" He tried squeezing his wagon between Jessie's and another one. For a moment, Jessie thought their wheels would lock together, tearing up Pa's wagon. Tightening his grip on the reins again, Jessie yelled, "What do I do, Pa?" "Hold her steady. Keep her straight," said Pa. "You'll be all right." The burly man charged to the front, scattering dirt all over the wagons he passed. Jessie and his pa breathed in the dust and coughed. "Pa, my eyes, they feel so gritty," said Jessie. He wiped his face and blew dirt from his lips. "Keep driving, son," said Pa. He winced in pain as the wagon was bumping along the uneven prairie. Before long, they noticed a few people were slowing down. Some were working on their broken wagon wheels, and others were taking care of their lame horses. "Pa, there's a pond way over there. There's some cedar trees around it. Let's go claim that for our land," said Jessie. And then he slowed down the horses. As they got closer, they saw a red-haired man standing under a tree. His horse gulped water at the pond. "Move on," he yelled, holding up his hammer and stake. "This land, it's mine." Paul sighed, shifted in his seat, and said, "Jessie, turn those horses toward that little hill over there." Jessie looked around as the horses climbed to the top of the hill. He said, "I like this land a lot, Pa. There's a creek down there in the valley and wildflowers growing on the hillside. there's even some mistletoe, Paul, hanging in that tree. Ha, I like it too, said Paul. We could build a house over there by those trees, and then we could plant a big garden. Whoa, Ben, whoa, Bob, said Jessie, pulling the wagon up to the creek. The thirsty horses stretched their necks towards the water. I'll look for the surveyor's stone, said Jessie, as he jumped from the wagon. He knew Paul needed that information to claim the land. Jessie ran up and down the hill and then toward the creek, searching for the stone. I've got to find it, he thought. After a few minutes, he yelled, Pa, I think that's the stone that we're looking for. The one near the top of the hill on the other side of the creek. He grabbed the hammer and the stake and he ran toward the water. He took a deep breath and he splashed through the creek. It was really cold, but he didn't care. He raced up the hill and he saw the surveyor's stone near a pile of rocks. He quickly placed Pa's stake next to it. Then he pounded the stake in the hard ground until it was deep in the dirt. Turning towards his paw, he threw his hat in the air. We did it, Paul! We did it! He knew the next few years would be busy ones. They had to take that 160 acres and make something prosperous out of it. They'd build a house and a barn and improve the land. But right now, though, he couldn't wait to tell his ma about the wildflowers that were in bloom. She'd like that. What he'd like, though, was fishing and swimming in the creek. So, that's kind of one version of the Oklahoma Land Run. I just also had a few pictures to show you, and this one is a pretty famous one of one of the land runs. Probably not the very first land run, but it gives you a good idea of all the horses and the commotion and the dust when they said, go. And then, well, I always try to imagine what it would have been like being in a wagon like this and trying to cover all that distance on that rocky prairie land out there. Kind of fills your imagination with all kinds of things, doesn't it? Well, since they mentioned wildflowers, I thought I'd pick a few and put them here today since I love wildflowers. And let me share a few other books with you. So, this is a fun book, Pappy's Handkerchief, and it's another land run story that would be good for you to read. And it's by Devin Scillian. Also, if you enjoy reading about prairie life, this is a really good book. If I Were a Pioneer on the Prairie by Anna Kama. And this is a similar type book, If I Traveled West in a Covered Wagon. It's by Ellen Levine. You can tell Mrs. Anderson really likes this book because it's kind of getting worn and tattered. This is another favorite one of mine about pioneer life called Wild West Days. It has all kinds of fun ideas in it for projects, games, recipes, and activities. And this is a cool one too. It's called Heading West. I really like that one. 21 Activities, Life with the Pioneers. If your mom and dad are nearby, you might tell them to come over because I've got a couple books they might enjoy. This one's called The 89ers, Oklahoma Land Rush of 1889 by Catherine Baldwin. And then this is just a novel called The Oklahoma Run, and it's kind of fun too. And it is by Alberta Wilson Constant. Well, I've really enjoyed my time with you on this beautiful afternoon as we think about the land run and what that meant for the person who did it at that time and what it still means for us today in beautiful Oklahoma where we live. Well, have a good afternoon, everybody. I hope I see you again soon.